Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for this Buy Recycled training being offered collaboratively by NERC and the Baltimore County Bureau of Solid Waste Management. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge and thank our generous sponsor that have helped to make the webinar possible, Advanced Drainage Systems. The webinar is being recorded, and a recording of it will be posted on the NERC website by tomorrow, and you will get an email from GoToWebinar after the webinar, meaning tomorrow, telling you where you can find it. But the hint is that it will be on the NERC homepage. Please do use the question box. That's how we're going to be getting your questions, and we definitely want to hear from you. So if you have trouble finding that, you have a little dashboard that is either showing or hidden. If it's hidden, it's a little orange arrow at the top right of your screen. You click on that, and that will open it up, and it will give you access to a couple of important things. One is the question box. So you see questions, and you click on that little white arrow, and it opens the box, and you type it in and hit return. And I will be reading the questions, monitoring it as we go, and then I'll read the questions as they relate to what's being discussed. If we don't get to all the questions during the presentation, when Richard is done, then we'll come back to more questions. There are also two handouts that are available for you to download. So under the little handouts section, you can see if you open that, there are two PDFs there. One is a list of Buy Recycle resources, and another is a fact sheet about Buy and Recycle. They're both relatively short documents, so don't be worried about that. Let's see. I'm going to introduce our speaker who was having a little technical trouble. So if he isn't here right away, I can stall. But I'm going to read his bio to you in the meantime. Richard is the director. Actually, now he's the acting recycling and waste prevention manager. He just got promoted of the Baltimore County Bureau of Solid Waste Management. He has more than 40 years of legislative policy and implementation experience in Buy Recycling programs. He has conducted more than 180 training programs on Buy and Recycle and is the author of the Buy Recycle Training Manual. He's also the author of both of the handouts that are available for download there, the resource list and also the fact sheet. And I see Richard is coming back in now with exquisite timing. So that is great. I also want to note just selfishly that if you aren't familiar with the Government Recycling Demand Champion program, this is a free program that's being offered to entities around the country, and it's to support your efforts to buy recycled. So there will be an introductory webinar about that on I always get the date wrong, January 27th at 2 p.m. And you can find a link to register for that on the NERC homepage, which is where the recording of this will also be, www.nerc.org. And so let me make Richard the presenter, so he'll be able to pop in there. And he'll be with us in just a moment. Hello, Richard. So
hello,
we're seeing,
Lynn.
hello, glad you're back. Seeing your screen, we're not seeing you, but I think probably your presentation is, for the moment, more important, but we do want to see you. So let's get your presentation open. And reminder to people to be sending your questions throughout through the question portal. And as I said, we will be asking questions during the presentation, but if we, for whatever reason, don't get to yours and we have time at the end, we'll be asking the question then.
So Lynn, help me get back into the slideshow.
Yeah. So you, I think it's your, the very first little icon down below this list here, the 1.5 thing.
Yeah.
Double click on that.
Oh, I just need to get it up. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. You're the presenter. Well, you should have accepted. You're the presenter, so it should be all set there.
How about now?
No. Did you accept when I made you the presenter? Yes, it says you're no the so you're the presenter and you need to double click on that. Oh, you need to show your screen. Pick what you want to show. Pick sharing. There you go. Perfection. Great. Now all we need is you and we're ready to go. So thanks, Richard, and I'll be here looking at the questions.
I want to first take this opportunity to thank NERC and Lynn for inviting me to participate in this process. This is a team effort that we've been doing to not only support the NERC activities, but also give you some background in buy recycled programs and how you start a buy recycled program. I want to just back up and just let you know that I've been doing this for over 40 years. I was involved in setting up the first buy recycled program in Maryland on buying recycled paper back in 1977 and have been working very closely on this issue ever since. So let's take a look at what our topics are for today. We're going to talk about why we buy recycled products. We're going to talk about legislation and programs, the importance of making a commitment to buy recycled, how you get started, a variety of products that are available and where to find them, price, quality, and availability, which are the key issues in buying recycled products, specifications, testing, contracts and grants, cooperative purchasing, closed loop recycling, buying for source reduction, environmentally preferable purchasing, and record keeping and evaluation. So I wanted to start today with a little bit of humor, I hope, and talk about some recycling acronyms. I suspect everyone knows that NIMBY means not in my backyard. NOPE or NOPE means not on planet Earth. NOTE means not over there either. PITB means put it in their backyard. Banana means build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone. And cat mud means confused and afraid to make unpopular decisions. So those are some acronyms that you can use in your office. And if anybody wants them, I would be happy to send them to you. So we're going to begin with a poll to talk about why you're interested in buying recycled products. And I think there are 4 major reasons to buy recycled products. The first is market development. The second is climate change goals. The third is reducing disposal. And the fourth is managing resources. And the poll is now open.
So I think you could just click on your screen to pick your answers, and then we'll see. Oh, I see they're showing up over here. Okay. Let's see. Collecting responses. And let's see. Still see some responses coming in. I'll give it another couple of seconds, Richard.
Okay.
I thought this was going to show up on the screen, so I clearly didn't master something. But here's what we have. 60, oh, somebody's still voting. We have 61% market development, 67% climate change goals, 72% reduce disposal, and 62% manage resources. So reduce disposal topped out, and then the other 3 are all in the 60s. So perhaps, neck to neck.
I think the bottom line to the poll and what the poll indicates is that there are lots of reasons to buy recycled products and lots of things that we're concerned about in terms of doing so. So I wanted to take a look and just walk you through these relatively quickly. The first is you need to create markets. You need to find ways to find new markets for recycled products. And if you're actually buying a finished recycled product, you're creating a market which can create more manufacturing and more jobs as a result. Managing resources by using recycled products, you're reducing the dependence on virgin resources. Conserving energy, virtually all, if not all, recycled products have an energy saving component. Lowering greenhouse gas emissions, and you have a note there about carbon dioxide being 417 parts per million at the present. So that is certainly a concern for many organizations. Reducing disposal, keeping material out of the landfill. Creating jobs and economic development. Providing domestic markets to offset lower exports. And we all know what has happened in China. And finally, meet sustainability and climate change goals. So I want to take a look at the recycling symbol and remind you of what the recycling symbol means as far as buying recycled products. You will notice, as you are well aware, there are 3 arrows in the recycling symbol. The first arrow represents collection and processing. The second arrow represents manufacturing, and the third arrow represents somebody actually buying and using a product that is made from recycled material. We spent a lot of time over the past few decades focusing on the collection and processing side, but we have not done as much on the market development side or on the buy recycled side. So again, the importance of the recycling symbol is it emphasizes the 3 aspects of recycling: collection and processing, manufacturing, and buying and using recycled products. So let's take a look at a second poll that we have this afternoon. And so you may check all that apply. The first one says we have a law or policy to buy recycled products. The second says we buy recycled paper. The third says we buy other recycled products. And the fourth says we track our recycled products purchases. So the poll is now open.
Richard, I'm almost inclined to let you guess what the winner is going to be here. We still have they're still coming in, so we're not going to close it out yet. But
I'm going to guess in this order. I'm going to guess buy recycled paper,
yeah,
our policy, other
yeah.
recycled products, and tracking purchases in that order. That's my guess.
Close. Votes are still coming in. We'll give it just another couple of seconds. We buy recycled paper is, I can almost say, winning by a landslide.
Okay.
Okie doke. I'm gonna close the poll. So let's see. We have 75% buy recycled paper, 55% buy other recycled products. So that was great to hear. 44% have a law or policy, and 20%, and frankly, Lynn is surprised it's that high, that track our recycled products purchases. So we do see some activity,
yes.
but the usual pathetic tracking.
Yes, yes. So we will get to that towards the end of the presentation. So let's talk a little bit about buy recycled legislation and programs. And the major focus here is on the EPA guidelines. If you're not familiar with the guidelines, EPA has guidelines for 61 products. And the guidelines apply not only to federal agencies, but state and local agencies and contractors using appropriated federal funds. They're required to use recycled products unless certain conditions apply, which are price, competition, availability, or performance. On the state and local side, we have a number of programs that have been established over the years. Some organizations have simply established goals. Some have published set-asides, which basically says that we're going to buy 20% or 40% of our paper with recycled content. Price preferences is another one. But what's happening now is that a number of agencies are simply requiring minimum content standards in their products. So for example, if you're buying copier paper, you would say, I want copier paper with 30% post-consumer material, and vendors would have to supply paper with that percentage, or else they're not able to participate in the process. We've also got two things going on in the private sector. One is that private companies are buying recycled products, and the National Recycling Coalition is looking at reestablishing something called the Buy Recycled Business Alliance, where they are going to look at trying to get more businesses to buy recycled products. And there's also a strong effort that's going on where where businesses are trying to get recycled products into their brands. So for example, there's legislation that is floating around, California being the most notable, that says that if you're going to sell a particular product in California, it has to have a certain percentage of recycled content. So there was a 1992 study that we did that showed that all states favored recycled products by law, executive order, or policy. An analysis of the legislation and policies shows that most states and local governments favor recycled products. The key is ensuring that the laws are implemented so that we're actually buying recycled products. And that's been my experience in recent times, is that we're beginning to see that there's lots of laws and policies on the books, but there's not so much going on in terms of actually buying recycled products. There's a listing on the right-hand side about some of the programs that are going on with APR and NERC, and these efforts are designed to encourage purchases of products containing post-consumer plastic resins. I want to take a moment to go into one of the key definition issues, and that is pre- and post-consumer recycled content. Pre-consumer material is material or byproducts generated after a product is manufactured, but before it reaches the final consumer. So for example, it could be printer's waste, it could be converting waste, but it does not include materials and byproducts generated from and commonly reused within a manufacturing process. So if we take the example of paper, it would not include the scraps and things that are off the cutting room floor at the paper mill, but it would include something that came from a printer. The other definition is post-consumer material, and that means material or finished product that has served its intended end use as a consumer product and has been diverted or recovered from waste destined for disposal, having completed its use as a final product. So for example, again, if you go to a printer's office and collect all the waste paper from a printer, that would not be post-consumer, but the memo that you write to someone else would be a post-consumer item. Lynn, I'm going to stop here. Have we gotten any questions about pre and post-consumer?
No, but I'm surprised. So thanks for the reminder to everybody to please do post your questions. We want to have this be as responsive to your needs as possible. So first of all, there were several of us laughing a great deal with your abbreviations at the beginning. So just so you know.
Thank you. I collect them.
Well, they were good. So somebody said, are these the two that you've just been discussing, are these ASTM definitions? And while I know that the asker knows what that means, ASTM or ISO, I wouldn't presume that everybody knows what those initials stand for. So the questions are those definitions captured in ASTM or ISO standards? But then we also need to know, what does that mean?
American Society of Testing Materials, I believe, is ASTM. And you'll have to help me, Lynn. I don't remember ISO.
I think it's International Standards.
Okay.
Oh, something with an O.
And the short answer to the question is, I believe they are, but I would need to go back and do some research. So I will include that as a question that I will follow up on, and at some point, we can follow up with people. I
That'd be great.
believe there are some pre and post consumer standards in ASTM. I'm not as familiar with ISO, but I will do some research and follow up on that.
That'd be great. And somebody's just wondering if you could just give another, tangible example of pre-consumer. This is, I know from my experience, a really confusing concept. Not that you didn't articulate
Okay.
it well, but it's not intuitive, quite candidly. So what would be another example?
So you send scrap plastic to a manufacturer, and the manufacturer then converts that plastic into a bottle or some other material. It has left the original manufacturing process and is being converted into a product, and therefore it is pre-consumer in the sense that it has left the original manufacturing process, but it has not reached the final consumer. So any of the scrap plastic that would come about as a result of that in a converting process would be considered pre-consumer as opposed to post-consumer.
Great. And would you say that more material is generated by as post-consumer or as pre-consumer? Where do those fall proportionately?
In terms of tonnage,
Yeah, and generation rate.
I'd have to, again, that's a good question. I'd have to do some research, Lynn, on what
Okay,
it is.
well,
But
we
I,
can
I do
follow
want to
up.
make one clarification that maybe will help people. Pre-consumer materials are generally higher quality materials. They're materials that you can use without any significant questions on quality. Post-consumer materials are materials that would otherwise go to the landfill. They're not going to be as high quality as a pre-consumer material. So as an example, manufacturers might get pre-consumer materials from a manufacturing facility, whereas they might get post-consumer material from a materials recovery facility. Does that help clarify some of the difference?
I suspect so. I want to say that we've had another wrinkle with another question, and also to acknowledge that somebody has, yes, that helped. We got a solid response there. That somebody has also shared with us an ISO definition. ISO 14021 defines post-consumer as material generated by households or by commercial, industrial, and institutional facilities in their role as end users of the product, which can no longer be used for its intended purpose.
Okay.
So it makes sense, but it's too bad nobody can say it in 2 words. Um, so then, so then
Lynn,
somebody,
I will tell you, we literally probably spent more than a decade trying to define these terms.
I don't doubt it, because I know, just,
And
and I'm not saying dig into this now, but just the question, what does recycling means, is wildly controversial. So
absolutely.
so then, Richard, somebody's also asked, is pre-consumer the same as post-industrial?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, a
Yes.
nice straightforward answer. Good.
Yes. Pre-consumer, post-industrial, they're synonymous.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Now we're going to do a poll, and I want to explain the purpose of this poll. This poll is not designed to get into the question of what your definition is. It is a question about the minimum content standard. So let's assume, for the purpose of this poll, that you have gone out into the marketplace and you are looking for, and let's just use printing and writing paper as an example. Okay, so you have 3 vendors that have come in, and you've asked them, you said, what can you offer me? And the first one says, I can offer you 30%. The second one says, I can offer you 50%. And the third one says, I can offer you 100%. So I want to take a poll and find out where you would set the minimum content standard. Would you set it at 30, at 50, or 100?
Getting lots of voting going on, which is great. Oh, we have people commenting on their votes. Haha.
Ah, okay,
Okie doke. So let's see. So we've had about 65% have voted. So let's see. So we have 25% said 30%.
right.
And then I think this is kind of funny. 52% said 50%. So half said half. 23% said 100%. But one of the responders, and I think she probably did pick 100%, said, yeah, but I don't know if I could afford something that had 100% post-consumer content, which I'm sure you'll discuss as a costing challenge.
So let me answer all those questions and answer. It's very interesting that the percentages of the poll broke down almost evenly, one
Yeah,
quarter, one half, and one quarter.
I think so too.
Um, the concept here is, what is your goal in buying recycled products? If your goal is to simply say, okay, we're buying paper that has no recycled content in it, and we want to have the maximum number of vendors here, then you would set the percentage at 30%. If, on the other hand, you say, well, I'd really like to kind of push the envelope, and I've got at least two vendors that can give me at least 50%. So at that point, you would say, I'm going to set the minimum content standard at 50%. If you are doing a document that is designed to demonstrate that recycled paper can be a high quality product that looks nice, and you want to have 100% recycled content, then you would set it at 100%. Now, I should have said at the beginning that this exercise is designed before you actually go out and buy the product. So we don't really know what the pricing might be. Now, it is possible that you could go and ask the vendors, to give a range of what their price is. But the idea is that this is designed to set the standard as opposed to actually going out and getting the price. So let's turn now to commitment. Commitment is an important part of buying recycled products.
So, Richard, I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts that
Sure.
people provided. So one person says, my vote was based on minimum. I would certainly make folks aware of higher options, but there's still enough people concerned about quality, which I know you're going to talk about. So if I want people on board, I've got to start lower and move up.
I think that's a good strategy.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay, I'm done.
so one of the things to consider in setting up a buy recycle program is you have to make a commitment. And I think the fact that less than half of the people who completed the poll said they did not have a current law or policy in place means that you really need to start by having a policy on buying recycled products. The second thing is, it has to involve the purchasing agency. It has to involve your recycling and solid waste groups. And the thing that people forget most often is it has to involve the using agencies. You need to get the Department of Transportation. You need to get your Parks Department, whatever it is, they need to be involved in the process. And that's where the third bullet comes in. You need to provide information to users. You need to involve the users in the process, and their feedback will help guide the process. The other thing that's important here, and the word climate here is not what we normally would think of in terms of environmental program, you have to change the climate within your organization. And what I mean by that is you need to have people focusing on buying recycled products. You need to have something in your program that you have for new employees. You need to make sure that it's something that people are aware of what the policy is, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to begin to change the climate for recycled products. So when I sent my boss the slide, this was the slide he was most fascinated by. And the question is, who is Gay Mullins, and why is he important in buying recycled products? Gay Mullins, you may recall a number of years back, there was an effort when Coca-Cola put out their new Coke Gay Mullins was the leader of the Old Coke program. And eventually he was successful in having Coke go back to simply the old Coke. And so Gay Mullins at one point in this process was actually asked to try a number of different sodas and tell somebody what he liked. Interestingly enough, he picked the new Coke over every product he tried, including the old Coke. Why is that important? It is important because you want to make sure that if there are people who have a bias against recycled products, that you involve them in the process so that they're comfortable in using the recycled products. And we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit more, because the problem is perception is reality. So that's what's important. So the next slide talks about some getting started tips. Number one is to review current purchases to establish a baseline. Many times, if you talk to agencies that are starting a buy recycled program and you ask them, well, what are you currently buying? They don't know the answer. So the first thing that I would do if you're in the process of starting a program, and even if you got a program that you really want to ramp up, is review your current purchases and figure out what you're already buying. Number two is directly related to that, and that is to take credit for what you're already buying. If you're buying copier paper, if you're buying cardboard boxes, if you're buying tissue and towel products that have recycled content, make sure you take credit for that. And the third is to evaluate where you may be able to buy recycled products. And that really leads us into the next slide and talks about a variety of recycled products that are out there. Most of us are familiar with the ones in the paper categories: office paper, tissue and towel, cardboard, office supplies, trash and recycling containers and bags is another one, remanufactured items, electronics. I'm trying to get my slide to advance, so bear with me a second. Vehicles, construction, both building and general construction. A number of things that you can do in the plastic lumber area, clothing, and compost and mulch. And I'm going to stop here and ask Lynn to take just a minute or two and talk about what we're seeing in the Demand Champions program on the plastic side.
Sure. Well, thanks, Richard. One of the things I'll say is that there's a lot more things that people are buying, things, for example, that you have on your list that have recycled content than the purchaser knows about. And your photo of the clothing is one that particularly resonates for me in that regard. As do electronics. I seriously doubt that less than, I don't know, 10% of you have computers or cell phones that do not have post-consumer recycled content. The big brands, they're doing this, and there are ways to find out and to find out what percentage they're using. In the clothing industry, I've spoken to manufacturers of the thread that goes into it, and they say, yeah, we're selling this stuff to the majority of manufacturers in the United States, selling things that are have a resin base, not wool, not cotton. The majority of that has post-consumer recycled content, and they don't want anybody to know. So I think that the point is just what Richard was saying. You need to raise people's awareness that it's there, that they're doing it, find out, and embrace it. Don't be put off by it. And what I'm seeing is that need to convince other people. So just what people were saying, the person who said, I have to start low and go higher. Yes, I mean, I think that's unfortunately a universal truth, or close to universal truth. But we're also seeing that with one person in an organization who's passionate, you really can make a difference by finding other people and engaging them in the conversation. Richard, there's a request. Can you go back to the first slide of recycled products. I think it's, there you go. I think that was the first one.
Okay.
So, I'm seeing a lot of interest, and I'm also seeing a lot of, I can't make this change alone. I have to get other people in my organization engaged, just the way you were saying, Richard.
Yep. It's that commitment that's important. So let me go back to some information on some sources of recycled products. A number of states do have contracts that you can buy off of those state contracts. There are a number of vendor lists out there on the internet, and there is a Buy Recycled Resources page that is attached that you can use that. There are lots of online listings of product lists, EPA, etc. And the other is cooperative purchasing agreements, and we'll talk about cooperative purchasing in just a few moments. But that's where you can find information. So let's take another poll. And Lynn, if I'm not mistaken, this is the last one. What do you consider to be the largest barrier to buying recycled products?
There it is. That's what I was trying to say. I muted myself. Well, this is very, very interesting. It's kind of fun being the only one that knows the answers. I'll also give you that. Somebody's added another bullet point, which we'll talk about in a second. So let's see, give you guys another couple of seconds to get your vote in. And then I can, be like the Oscars and say who the winner is. Okay, I'm gonna close it there. So half of the people, so we had about 75% of our audience responded, and half said price. 37% said availability. And what surprised me was how few people said quality. I mean, happy surprise, 12%. Now, we've heard from some of our audience members who have suggested that education is an important thing to go on the list. And then a tweak on availability, which is lack of information, just what we were talking about how do you know what's available out there. And then, of course, other people are saying perception, that, which I personally think is quality. Maybe I'm missing a nuance here. Or maybe just that the person's saying also that it's just not available, which, as we know, is not true. But I agree that there's a lot of, I hope it's not too harsh, ignorance out there.
So what I'm going to do for the next couple minutes is just give you an overview of the three topics, and then we'll go into some more specifics on some of them later on in the presentation. So in terms of trying to get the price to be more competitive with virgin or make it less than virgin, number one is to shop around. That is to go and see what's going on in the marketplace. It's also important as a sideline to that you let people know, whether you're buying recycled products or not, that that's something that you're interested in getting. So I would put a buy recycled statement in all of your specifications. Maximize the number of vendors. Obviously, the more vendors you have, the more they sharpen their pencil. Buying in large quantities. Again, by buying the larger quantities, you can get the unit price down. Cooperative purchasing, which we'll talk about in a few moments, and life cycle costing, which means that you look at other possibilities beyond just the initial price. On the quality side, the two things, number one is testing. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail in a few moments, that you test recycled products to make users comfortable. And also to make sure that you design your specifications so that they're performance related, not design related. so that you're not saying, for example, I want printing and writing paper with a brightness level of 95, which may be very difficult for a recycling manufacturer to be able to meet. So you want it to be something that's performance related, not design related. And again, there's lots of places for availability: state contracts, vendor lists, online listings, and cooperative purchasing agreements, as we saw earlier. On specifications, the first suggestion is to use existing recycled content standards and specifications where they're available. And I would say your first homework assignment, if you're not familiar with the EPA guidelines, is to take a look at what they have available. As I mentioned a moment ago, include buy recycled language in all your specifications. Specify the highest practical minimum level of recycled content and ask vendors to certify the percentage in their product. And that's certainly an area that we're working on that needs a lot more work, is to make sure that if you ask for a recycled product, that you're actually getting what you ask for. Again, performance instead of design standards, and third-party certification. There are a number of environmental groups that have programs that include recycled content in addition to other environmental performance standards. So you may want to take a look at those third-party certifications, and there's some information on that in the two-page handout that you will have available as well.
So, Richard, there's been quite a vibrant conversation going on in the question box here. And I may be misinterpreting the focus, but people are commenting on the challenge of availability, whether the stuff is available or not. And again, apologies if I'm misinterpreting the comments. I'm wondering, Richard, if you think there's a distinction between availability, I'll say ease of identifying products with recycled content in the public sector versus Lynn Goes Shopping, where I think personally it's actually harder, but that's my bias.
Okay, so my response is that Lynn going shopping is much more difficult. I don't think there's any question about that. And for a variety of reasons. Number one is that I think there are more recycled products available in the public sector, in government agencies, than there are in the typical grocery store. Number two, one of the reasons that happens is that if you're buying for a government agency, you have the advantage of high quantity, and therefore you can buy more products. So I do think it is a challenge. I think the long-term challenge that we have, and I can't really talk about, I don't really know the answer to the short-term situation. A lot of the issue having to do with availability has to do with information and education. I don't think there's any question that that's the biggest barrier in terms of availability. I think there are a lot of recycled products that are out there, and those products, can be purchased by government agencies and others. I think the question really becomes long-term, and we talked a little bit earlier about the fact that we're doing a lot of programs now on branding, where a large manufacturer is saying, I want to have 25% recycled content in my product. And I think the long-term question is whether there is enough good, high-quality material to be able to meet both the needs of people buying recycled products and people putting recycled products in their brands. And so what that tells us is that we have to continue to be diligent to work on the collection side as well as the buy recycled side to make sure that we have enough good, high-quality material. It means that we've got to start getting away from people throwing stuff in their bin that contaminates the bin, and we need to make sure that we're getting more high-quality material. Does that help in the answer, Lynn?
Well, of course, I'm speaking on behalf of our audience, but I do think that's helpful.
Okay.
If I'm wrong, somebody said yes. So that was nice of somebody to give us positive reinforcement there.
There you go. All right, so on the testing side, you need to test recycled products against your existing performance standards to give users comfort with and confidence in the product. And that goes back to what we talked about with Gay Mullins, that sometimes perception is reality. Seek out information from other users. There's lots of people buying recycled products across the country, but you may want to test a particular recycled product in your own circumstances and conditions. You may get a test result from somebody that their copier paper worked fine in their printers, and you may find for whatever reason it doesn't. Consider blind tests, which is you don't say what the product is. And last but not least, make sure that you document the results, so if the question continues to come up, you can continue to say, this is what we found out. A lot of what we buy, we don't buy in hard products. We don't buy printing and writing paper or plastic products or those kinds of things. We secure a large number of our products in service contracts and grants. And that's where we need to make sure that we don't have our buy recycled program end with a product that begins with the letter Z. You need to make sure that you're continuing to look at contracts and grants. What are you doing with printing contracts? What are you doing with landscaping contracts? What are you doing with construction and demolition contracts? Lots of places that you can use recycled content that are in contracts. And again, we've given you some examples: printing, building and road construction, vehicle maintenance, landscaping, janitorial, and other services. So make sure that as you look at your contracts as they're coming up for renewal or a new bid, make sure that you're including recycled content in those products. And that does raise a question that, or a comment that I want to make just generically, and that is, if you have a multi-year contract or a multi-year product purchase, consider looking at that product in the interim years and see whether you can change the contract to include recycled content. So in other words, if you've got a 5-year contract for paper and it's got a 5 one-year contracts, when you get to year number 2, say, well, let's take a look at this. Is this a place that we can include recycled content? If you don't do that, you're going to miss an opportunity. Cooperative purchasing is probably one of the most important strategies in buying recycled products. It does a lot of things. It saves on unit costs. It reduces the cost of preparing bids. By having many organizations participate, it increases the volume and availability of recycled products and establishes standard specifications. The next bullet is a reminder to start with internal cooperative purchasing first. What is it that your Parks Department may be buying and your Public Works Department may be buying? They both may be buying trash cans, and you may be able to do that all in one contract, take advantage of the larger quantity to reduce the prices and get recycled content into that product. The other thing to do is to look for opportunities to piggyback on existing bids. And there's a couple of ways to do that. Once again, state procurements often have recycled content that you can buy directly off that state contract. There are regional cooperatives that exist around the country. Sometimes they're a half a dozen counties and school boards and libraries and other things in the same group. And one of the things that I've learned very recently is that there are also national private cooperative purchasing organizations that may have recycled products on their list. So for example, we took a look at the pricing for buying recycling carts for everybody in our county. And one of the things that we discovered in that process is that there is a national bid that's already been done on those containers. And as a result of that, if we decide that we're going to buy those plastic containers, we may be able to buy them without going through a full procurement. So again, I think there's 2 ways to look at cooperative purchasing. One is to establish a cooperative purchasing group or organization of your own. And the second is to look at ways that you can piggyback on existing programs.
So Richard, could I just interject there also?
Absolutely.
Something that I was recently told by a state purchasing official is that another way to take advantage of a cooperative purchasing agreement is to look around. So, gee, neighboring, I have a good relationship with neighboring states, ABC. I wonder if they're buying this thing. And if they already have the product on contract, it's usually a very simple ask for that contract to be extended to your state.
Right.
So I think it has, I don't know this for a fact, but my impression was it's done at the state procurement level, and your state would then sign the same contract, but that it's also possible to ask to get onto somebody's contract.
Okay. I will include that in future programs.
So we have a question about what your anecdote that you were just giving us.
Yes.
Were the plastic recycling containers made of recycled content? And
Yes.
questioner, I'm editing your question to make that post-consumer recycled content.
I'm 99% sure that I asked the question about recycled content. I don't remember post-consumer, but my sense was that it did include post-consumer.
In fact, if I can, a number of companies, it is post-consumer, and some of them, it's even a version of closed loop, that
Right.
it's ground up old recycling carts.
And I believe in this case, you're absolutely correct that that was one of the things that they were doing.
Yeah.
Um,
And somebody volunteers that Minnesota has a great contract example as a place to start for joint purchasing.
okay. Closed loop programs. One of the things that we have discovered over the years is that there is an opportunity for organizations to be both the supply and the demand. And so the idea is that in a closed loop agreement, you collect what you buy and you buy what you collect. And so that means that you have to have good cooperation between solid waste and recycling organizations in order to do that. And the other thing that I would add to that is we also need to look at market development programs across the country. We got some information recently that there are at least 20 and probably more state governments across the country that have market development programs where they're trying to attract new businesses or to encourage existing businesses to buy more recycled products and to use more recyclable materials. And that may be a place where, particularly if you have a local company, you may be in a position to supply them with the material that they need and then buy the finished product from them. So if you haven't taken advantage of looking at your state agencies to see if they're doing market development programs, that would be another place to look on closed loop. Environmentally preferable purchasing is something that is, in my view, the child of buy recycled programs. We started with getting government agencies to buy recycled products, and that then got expanded into environmentally preferable purchasing, where you look at not only buying products for waste prevention, but you also look at products that have other environmental features. And as you see on the slide, we have items such as less packaging, more durable materials, reusable or recyclable, quieter products, energy efficient products, less toxic. I'm sure that there are a number of other environmentally preferable attributes that we can include on there. But I do want to go to the next slide real quickly and just emphasize something that's very important. I am a full supporter of green purchasing or environmentally preferable purchasing. What I do have a concern about is that I think sometimes we get government agencies, they get into buying green products and they buy better lighting and they buy, more efficient vehicles and vehicles that have, that use alternative fuels and all those kinds of things. And I just want to emphasize here that it's important that if you do a program, that's an environmentally preferable purchasing program, that you don't forget the buy recycled portion of it. That you continue to look for the recycled products that we've talked about during this webinar, and that you continue to make that a part of your program. Our last topic of the day.
So Richard, before you move on, can I interrupt? Somebody's asked if you could give a couple of examples about a closed loop program.
Okay. So, for example, you collect your office paper, you send it to a manufacturer, and they make new recycled paper out of it. You collect plastic bottles in a park, and then you make plastic lumber products from those plastic bottles, or milk jugs to make plastic bottles, because most often the plastic lumber is from milk jugs. So you collect the material. You collect tires to go to a retreader and then buy the retreads back. So there's lots of different ways that you can be both the supplier and the buyer. So those are some examples that you may want to think about.
Thanks.
So let's move to the last slide, record keeping and evaluation. And the poll that we took earlier today is an indicator of what the issue is with record keeping and evaluation. It's an important part of the buy recycle process. And I often tell people, and the way to think about it is that if you have a GPS system and you needed to get to my office in Baltimore, you can't tell how to get there if you don't know where you're starting from. And so, again, we talked earlier about the importance of getting a good database of what you've actually got. And so it means that you need to keep good records for your supervisors, your customers, your employees, and the public. You need to tell people, we bought, $100,000 worth of recycled copier paper. We bought, $50,000 worth of tissue and towel products. But unfortunately, the problem is that most people don't keep those kinds of records. And as I've been told many times, essentially what doesn't get measured doesn't happen. So you can't really go back and say, this is what we're actually doing if you have no way of measuring what's going on. It also means that you share information on your successes. It means that you need to establish the baseline data. And then you need to look at what are the products that we're buying, what are the quantities that we're buying, what was the recycled content in the product, what was the dollar volume, and what was the experience using the product. And I would strongly suggest that these reports be done, no less than annual. And there are a number of organizations, and King County, Washington comes immediately to mind, that they keep a report on an annual basis of what they're actually buying. The state of Maryland just published their annual report on what recycled products that they're buying. So the bottom line is you need to make sure people know what you're actually doing. And by knowing what you're doing, that gives you the opportunity and the ability to go and buy new products and make your program better.
So I'll add there, Richard, that when you do that, when you keep those records, you can also, and both, I believe, the King County and state of Maryland example you just gave do this, you can then use existing environmental benefits calculators to explain to your constituents and your supervisors about the actual environmental results of your behavior. Things like energy savings, avoided greenhouse gas emissions, reduced solid waste disposal. There's other factors, but those are some of the ones people are generally most interested in. And if you don't do that record keeping, you can't do that. You can't make that connection either.
Right. Thank you. That's an excellent addition to that. Is that yeah, you can express it in in terms that are particular for a specific program. So for example, if you're doing a climate change program, you can say, well, our purchases of recycled products reduce the greenhouse gases by X amount, as far as that's concerned. Sources of information: Government Recycling Demand Champions, APR Demand Champions. King County, Washington, which I mentioned earlier, has probably done some of the yeoman's work on this, and Karen Hamilton was on one of the previous webinars that NERC did. The EPA Comprehensive Procurement Guidelines, and there is a resource list which is part of this webinar. So
do you remember if the calculator? Do you remember if the calculators are included in that? I think they are. But
yes,
they are. Okay, because we're having some questions from people. So
yes.
as Richard is noting, we have 2 handouts you can download, resources and fact sheet. And on the resource list, there are links to calculators of the impact of buying products with recycled content.
And I would also mention in the fact sheet, there are links to a number of different organizations and a number of different opportunities for more information. So there is a link to the EPA calculator on the 2-page document. There is also links to some of the environmental organizations that are that include recycled content in their environmental evaluations. So take a look at both the resource list and the fact sheet. And I would also mention that we are in the process right now of updating a document that we did a number of years ago called the Buy Recycle Training Manual. And I actually had somebody wanted to change the title of it, and I wasn't willing to do that because it has such a history.
What did they want?
I don't remember.
Oh,
Whatever it was, they were trying to change it from Buy Recycle Training Manual, and I have too many hours of time and sweat invested in it for me to change the title. So
that's fine. I was just curious.
I wasn't willing to do that. So we are in the process of updating that now. I'm hoping we can get it done in the first quarter of the year. I was hoping it was a little bit further along, but other things intervened. So with that, you have my email, you have my cell number. I am working from home. I have seen my office once since St. Patrick's Day for anybody's interest, but I'm more than happy to answer any follow-up questions that we don't cover today, either by email or by phone.
Well, that was wonderful, Richard. Thank you. So first, we've got a little time left if people want to post more questions. And of course, we're already having interest in that training manual. So I will note that when it is available, it will, because Richard has already told me I can do this, it will be posted on the Government Recycling Demand Champion website. And there will be an article about it in the NERC email bulletin, our monthly newsletter, which either you already receive and memorize and share with your family, or you will. So that will be made available, and you will get an announcement about it. I want to really thank Richard. Just a great job as always, and you're getting a lot of kudos here in the comment boxes as well. You should. I'd want to again thank our sponsor, Advanced Disposal Systems, who makes plastic drainage pipes with post-consumer recycled content, by the way. And also to note that NERC has several webinars coming up in the next couple of weeks. A week from today, depackaging and commercial composting, an integrated system for organics recycling, which I have to say may hit our highest registration numbers ever. I noted earlier, driving recycling markets, an introduction to the Government Recycling Demand Champion program. That's the following week, January 27th. Then on January 28th, we're going to hear about recycling markets in 2021. So we're going to predict. And Then on February 3rd, we're going to talk about models for collecting residential food waste for organics composting. You can find links to all those webinars on the NERC homepage, which is also where this webinar recording will be posted. All our webinars are free and at 2 p.m. Eastern. And thank you so much again, especially to Richard and to not only our great audience for being here, but for such a vibrant set of questions and conversation. So with that, we'll say have a wonderful balance of your day. And I was told I can still say Happy New Year's for 2 more days. So Happy New Year and take care. So goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.